well. And a lot of them are bleeding, right, on their card products. So I'd like to understand what the income lines are, what the cost lines are for offering a card product as a fintech. So we like you. So we are going to give you a part of our bean range. And so the fintech is saying, what's EK saying? Because I don't need direct bean sponsorship. The bank is creating a card program for me under their own system, like the banks that already have the card management systems from Postillion. Yeah. So do I need to get into all this complexity you're talking about? Cards 101. Why cards? What's the opportunity? The card schemes, that have the card brands, and then do the scheme rules and all that. Who else do we have, and how does that affect fintechs coming into this value chain? For people that want debits, not prepaid, do they need a processor as well, or do they just rely on the banks for everything? So we'll go into the business now. I would like to understand, because you mentioned that a lot of people, go into cards because X did it, Y did it, and Z did it, and we cannot be out of, the show. So we want to go and do it as well. And a lot of them are bleeding, right, on their card products. So I'd like to understand what the income lines are, what the cost lines are for offering a card product as a fintech.
Okay, so let me just share my screen a little bit. Can people see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, yes, so this is really it, and it's not just about cards. It's about business generally. If you enter a business and you don't understand the cost lines and the income lines, you're going to have serious issues. So like I was saying, this guy had approached us and he wanted to do cards, and I was asking questions about, what are you going to do in year 1, year 2? And all he said was, his customers want cards, so let's issue cards. And when you have that, it's a recipe for failure, But what we try to do is and there's nothing wrong with not knowing. See, there's a lot I don't know. So if I go into a space that I'm ignorant, and somebody is able to sort of, shed some light, I appreciate it. So we try to just sit them down and say, look, cards is a good business, but you have to understand, the business. So on the cost lines, obviously you're talking about the scheme costs. So to join either one of the big schemes, you have to have, a membership fee, an annual fee. And then when you get into the processing of the cards themselves, as in the issuance of the cards, you have monthly fees, you have quarterly fees, you have annual fees, so, and these fees are quite significant because you're charged for everything. What I mean by everything is whether the transaction is successful or not successful, you get charged, so, and that is become, I'm sure you talked about, fintechs bleeding. That's become one of the main issues for that. Then you have card production costs, fulfillment, courier costs. Then you have the processor costs, so that's like, we a processor, marketing, advertising costs. What I don't have here is the regulator costs, in terms of sometimes before you can, you need to get a license, and there's a cost to that as well. So all of this has to be factored in, to a model for you to understand that, it costs something for you to issue cards. Because a lot of fintechs come from the mobile money side where things are relatively less expensive. Let me even stress that again for everybody who's thinking about it. Cards is a very expensive business. If anybody tells you otherwise, they're just pulling your tail. Okay. But on the income line, you have issuance fees, loading fees, transaction fees, OIF, international transaction. These are currency markups. You have float income. You have annual, monthly fees. Now, it's about understanding how do you mix everything together such that you're covering your costs, with your income lines, So yes, we sit them down and we try to explain this to them. And then we do something else, we ask them to give us their projections as well, which is this other screen, which is like, how many cards you're going to do year 1, year 2, year 3, what are you going to charge? Because what it does is it gets them thinking along the lines of how a card program is supposed to be run. Because cards is not like buying and selling. We have a lot of that mentality, that, oh, I buy a biro for 10 naira, I sell it for 2 naira. No. Most card programs, you won't make money in year one. In year two, you should be getting close. You see you're eating into the cost, and there should be a place where you're getting to, a break even. And then, you're making money. But all of that depends on if you have the fundamentals in place, in terms of you have the right type of product, you have the right type of pricing, the right, transactions that people are doing. Just for, anyone out there, the most lucrative transaction is an international transaction. Okay. And why is that? Because you have 4 revenue lines that you can make on international transactions. You have the transaction fee, which is basically what that means is I do a transaction, I charge, customer does a transaction, you charge them. Okay, so whether it's internet, physical POS, or an ATM withdrawal, that's a transaction fee. Then you also have the markup. What you have is the static markup. Visa and MasterCard have a different name for it, but it's what you place on the currency. Okay, it could be 2%, 2.3%. I'm not sure it's up to 5%, but that's a markup. And then you have interchange. Interchange is what you earn because your cardholder goes to purchase something from a shop or online. Just to explain, if I have a shop and I'm selling something online or physical, and that thing is worth $100, I will not get $100 at the end of the day. I'll get maybe $99. The $1 that is left is what we call the merchant service commission. So it's like an incentive for cardholders to come that is shared amongst, the issuers, etc. So that's interchange. And then the last one is the dynamic markup, where, because if you look at international transactions, especially if you have, a Naira card or a CD card or shillings card, it has to be converted to another currency. And that is done centrally by the schemes, and they have their own rate. But if you want to, alter that rate, you can have a dynamic currency markup. So you have about 4 distinct lines for making money. Now, with all of that, you begin to see a pattern, because what we do is we take the projections, we add the cost, and then they begin to see, now, wow, so this thing, hi, it's tough. But it's good to have those discussions, tough discussions before, because we're having some tough ones now. People are crying, people are, they're in deep wahala, and they're like, I never knew it was like this, so I never knew, but if you get it right, cards can be a very lucrative business, but you have to have it right. One of the things that we need to help people listen is no more free, because a lot of them come with this, oh, we're not going to charge anything. We're not going to charge anything. I said, my brother, this thing no go work. Say, don't worry. We're not, you no go work. Say, now, because apart from what our cost is, what you're paying the bank for being a BIN sponsor. As I said earlier, every transaction on the scheme, you get charged. So, and today, because of e-commerce transactions, for every 1 successful transaction you do, there are about 4 failed transactions. So you can have, in a month, a good program can have over 300,000 denied transactions. 300,000 times the cost from the schemes is anywhere from 30 cents to 50 cents. If you times that, it gives you tens of thousands of dollars every month. And that is a cost that you cannot make money on those transactions. An approved transactions, you can earn your interchange, you can earn your OIF, you can earn all those things. But denials, it's just a big chunk. And today, some of the banks are starting to pass that cost on to the fintechs.
Exactly, yeah, and the fintechs
You know, yeah, and it's very uncomfortable conversations, and I mean, I have my view on that whole cost side, but it's something that we tell everyone now that we're talking to. Look, oh God, this is how it is. It's not, So, and some of them are like, oh no, we want somebody who can just give us a. If you work with
more questions, right, on this, the BIN sponsorship. So there are people that or there are fintechs that talk to banks, and these banks already have a BIN range already assigned to them. So I don't know, let's say very simple 600,600. And from that BIN, you can start structuring the product code and whatever it is. And the banks will be like, oh, we like you guys, you're doing very fine all over Twitter and LinkedIn. And, you have influencers and stuff. We like you. So we are going to give you a part of our BIN range. And so the fintech is saying, what's Ike saying? Because I don't need direct BIN sponsorship. The bank is creating a card program for me under their own system, like the banks that already have the card management systems from Postillion. Yeah. So do I need to get into all this complexity you're talking about?
So what you're describing is also BIN sponsorship.
Okay.
So it takes many different folds for BIN sponsorship. The bottom line is, you as a fintech, you do not have a BIN. Abby, you don't have a BIN.
Okay, yeah.
So, and the bank has the BIN. So whichever format it comes in, it is BIN sponsorship. So you do have, in fact, some of the banks we work with, they actively engage with fintechs, and they sign them up, and they just tell us, set them up, and we just set them up. We also engage with fintechs, and we take fintechs to our banks. So, I mean, from the GTP world, we have clients in about 34 African countries. What that means is potentially we have BIN sponsorships in all those countries. So if you have a fintech that has Pan-African aspirations, we can take them across Africa. So, and different types of BIN sponsorships, the cost model also differs. So you can have a cost model where, again, the bank and the fintech sign, and typically that's where a lot of the fintechs get the short end of the straw, because, especially banks are big, they see themselves as big. They see the fintech as, I'm doing you a favor. So the commercials tend to play that out, where the bank gets the majority and the fintech gets less. But to the bank's defense, they, in that model, they take all the other costs, all the scheme costs and everything. So that's that. Then you have another model where, maybe the fintech signs a deal with the processor, and then goes to the bank. Imagine, because I was a banker, it's difficult to sell 5,000 cards in a year as a banker. It's difficult to sell 10,000 cards in a year. Meanwhile, one fintech can give you that by just signing a contract with them. So that's why when you take a fintech to a bank and say, Oga Banker, we have this guy, he's got about 200,000 customers and he wants to issue virtual cards. And on top of that, you don't pay the processing fee because the fintech pays the processing fee. But as a reward, you get a lesser part of the revenue because all the other costs the fintech bears it. So there are different models around the BIN sponsorship that you can work with. And it's all ultimately about what benefits, the fintech at the end of the day, because they're the customer, we don't want them to do something that is not beneficial to them and not sustainable. So that's the key word, really. That's the key word now. It has to be sustainable, the model. Yeah.
Interesting stuff. I wanted to ask one question, but I'll leave it so we can enter into the troubled waters. So let's to the troubled waters.